We're so excited to celebrate our 8th birthday on September 28th in the Bullard High School Theater.
This is great.
8 years is quite an accomplishment, and we've got some big things planned.
That's hilarious. Did you guys see that?
Our birthday service and our At the Movies sermon series leading up to it are the perfect opportunities for you to invite your family and friends.
Each service will have concessions and action, adventure, inspiration from some of our favorite movies to the big screen.
Lame.
Biblical themes and inspiration are found almost everywhere you look, and we'll discover plenty of them in each film each week.
That's gotta hurt, am I right, everyone?
We hope you'll join us this Sunday and every Sunday leading up to our 8th birthday celebration on the 28th. 8 is gonna be great.
Welcome to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Are you ready?
Yes.
Doctors, lawyers never get beyond 16,000 rupees. He's on 10 million. What can our slumdog possibly know?
He went on the show because I thought she'd be watching. She's my destiny.
Slumdog Millionaire was originally a book by Vikas Swarup, and the book was called Q&A. The movie came out in 2008, and it won 8 Academy Awards, including those for Best Picture and Best Director. The movie follows this rag to riches story of an Indian teenager who becomes a millionaire by winning a version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. The film opens with Jamal Malik being brutally interrogated by the police on suspicion of cheating after he gets close to winning the Indian version of the show. They can't believe that this poor street kid could know the answers to these seemingly random trivia questions. The movie unfolds as Jamal tells his life story. The heart of the story is Jamal's love for Radhika. They meet during their time on the streets, and their paths constantly cross and separate throughout the years, but Jamal never stops searching for her or loving her. Radhika becomes a symbol of hope and destiny in Jamal's life. In fact, it's later revealed that the only reason he went on the game show was because he knew she'd be watching. He wanted to find her. And as the game show progresses, each question triggers a memory from Jamal's life, revealing how his harrowing experiences inadvertently provide him with the correct answer. The first question was, who was the star in the 1973 hit film Zanjeer? Jamal immediately flashes back to a memory when he was in the slums and a famous movie star, an idol of Jamal's, was going to be in the area. But his older brother Salim locked him in an outhouse. Jamal then jumps into the sewage while holding a picture of his idol. He was going to do whatever it took to get the autograph. And once he gets the autograph from the famous actor, his brother steals it from him and sells it for 2 coins. Another question. In depictions of God Rama, he is famously holding what in his right hand? Jamal recalls the Bombay riots, which tore through his slum. During the violence, he and his brother witnessed their mother's murder. One of the leaders of the riots depicted himself as Rama, and Jamal never forgot what he's holding in his right hand. The film makes it clear that he would rather not know the answer, as it reminds him of his loss. And on the questions go. Every question asked, Jamal is able to answer because of distinct memories and moments from his life. Some were positive memories. He was asked who the author was who wrote the poem, The Road Not Taken. And Jamal remembers being a child and reciting that exact poem in order to impress Latika. He answers the question correctly. So sometimes the questions evoked some of the rare, beautiful moments that he had experienced, but most often it was through his suffering that he came to know the answers. So throughout the movie, he's telling the police who are interrogating him how he knew all the answers. And he shares of the last time that he saw Latika. She was being held by a crime lord, and his brother Salim was working for the crime lord. Jamal sees her only for a moment, but she's watching Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Jamal tried to help her escape, but his brother is on the payroll, and he stops the escape attempt. And then the audience, the viewers, you and me, we're caught up to the present timeline, and it's the last question. Jamal can walk away with 10 million rupees, or he could keep going and win it all. The question is, in Alexander Dumas' book, The Three Musketeers, 2 of the musketeers are called Athos and Porthos. What was the name of the 3rd musketeer? He doesn't know. He and his brother would call himself Athos and Porthos when they were growing up, but they never knew the name of the 3rd musketeer. So he uses his final lifeline to phone a friend. And the only number in the world that he knows is his brother's. And his brother isn't going to pick up because he has sacrificed himself to let Latika escape. So Latika answers his phone, left in his car. Check out this scene.
You are on your own, Jamal.
Hello? Hello, Jamal?
I'm guessing that isn't your brother. This is?
My name is Latika.
Okay, Latika. You want to hear the question one more time? The question, Jamal, the question.
In Alexander Dumas' book, The Three Musketeers, 2 of the musketeers are called Athos and Porthos. What was the name of the 3rd musketeer? Was it A, Aramis, B, Cardinal Richelieu, C, D'Artagnan, D, Blanchet?
15 seconds.
Where are you?
I'm safe.
10 seconds. Latika, what do you think?
I don't know. I've never known. Jamal, खुदा तुम्हारी क्या?
You really are on your own now, Jamal. Your final answer for 20 million rupees.
Hey,
A, because?
just because. Final answer A. Aramis.
Aramis. Which is, I have to tell you, the right answer!
The movie ends with Jamal and Latika meeting in the train station where they were once separated. It's a beautiful scene, beautiful movie. And then during the credits, there's this epic Bollywood dance scene. It's great. There is a lot of life that connects with Slumdog Millionaire. And there's a lot of the Bible that connects with Slumdog Millionaire. Several years ago, during the summer, I took the kids swimming at Sarah's grandma's house. Dex was probably 7 or 8, and Ivy is on the pool steps, and she's playing with this like little mermaid toy. And Dex is running towards me on the side of the pool with his goggles on, and his foot slips. And he falls into the pool, he hits his hip on the side, and he swims to me, removes his goggles, exposes his tears, and he cries, "Why didn't Jesus protect me? I thought he was supposed to protect me." I say, "Well, son, sometimes bad things happen in life." And he said, "I just heard a story at church on Sunday how Jesus was with 3 guys protecting them inside of a fire. Why didn't he protect me?" And I said, "Well, Dex," he says, "why doesn't he just protect everyone all the time?" I said, "That's a really good question." Unbeknownst to him, Dex was asking one of the deepest philosophical and theological questions of all time. Dex is not the only philosopher watching this right now. Okay, I would venture to say that we have all stepped into this arena when we see or experience suffering. Most often, when we see the intense suffering of others, we want to explain it. So we say things like, "Someday you'll be glad it happened. It was part of the plan. God's up to something. God doesn't make mistakes. It was just their time. There's always a silver lining." Won't it be great to see how God uses that? God's ways are not our ways. And then, of course, everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. And I'm going to be vulnerable with you right now. I don't think everything happens for a reason. And whenever this phrase is said, when it's said to someone who is hurting, I know that it's coming from a really, really good place. It's coming from a place to try and give hope in the middle of despair. It's trying to give peace in the midst of turmoil. It's trying to give comfort in the midst of suffering. It's trying to give answers to questions that don't have answers. Sometimes it's trying to find the good in the evil, and I do not believe there is ever any good in evil. And when we watch a movie like Slumdog Millionaire, where Jamal's tragic circumstances eventually give him the answers to game show questions, we're tempted to think, oh, everything happens for a reason. But that's not what's happening at all. And if Jamal was a real person and we asked him if he'd rather have his mother or the correct answer to question 3, I think we know what he'd say. Now, there are some verses that can lead us to think that everything happens for a reason. And the most popular and the most prominent is Romans 8:28. The King James Version says it this way: "And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God." Now, here's a great example of where translation plays a crucial role in our understanding of the Bible. This can be interpreted that all things good and bad happen for a reason, for the good of them that love God. Since this was the only English translation for about 400 years, this way of understanding God's work came to be authoritative. Now listen how the New Living Translation makes God's role even clearer. This is the New Living, Romans 8:28. "And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God." Now in this translation, God's role in all things that happen, good and bad, it's that God causes them. It's a short step from this verse to everything happens for a reason. But let me offer you an alternative translation. The NIV says it this way: "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him." The difference can be found in one little preposition, 2 tiny letters, I and N, in. And there is a Grand Canyon of difference between all things working together and God working in all things. The NIV version says that no matter what happens, good or bad, explainable or unexplainable, God is at work in them. God is working through even the most tragic situations to try and bring about good. And the grammatical difference is small, but the theological difference is enormous. Taken this way, believers are not promised that everything works out for us. Instead, we're challenged to be God's co-workers, bringing about good purposes in a world where things don't always turn out the way we hope. I, like so many of you, have heard and seen some terrible, tragic things happen in this world. Last fall, after Dex's baseball game, he and I went to a burger joint. We get our food, and then a message pops up on my cell phone. And it was my friend Mike from Africa. Mike is Malawian, and he is one of the best people I have ever met on planet Earth. I've known him over 20 years. There have been seasons in my life when I wasn't sure if I could stand and keep going, and my brother Mike gathered Christians together on the other side of the world and prayed for me, encouraged me. And so I'm sitting across from my son, and I read a message from Mike about his son. He said that his son has had complicated malaria and he is no more. He had gone to be with the Lord. So terrible. And this was the second child that Mike has lost in 4 years. God doesn't kill children. This is not part of God's plan. We live in a fallen world where there is great suffering. God's will is not the only will at work in our world. There's human will. There's the will of supernatural evil. And there is so much collateral damage. Can we please stop calling the devil's best shots God's doing? Please stop calling evil good. It's not. Our hope is not that one day it will all make sense. Our hope is that The God of the universe will be with us no matter what. And that God can bring about good in the midst of bad. God's not causing all the bad things to happen. Sometimes it's our choices. Sometimes it's the choices of others. Sometimes it's supernatural evil. Sometimes it's collateral damage in a world at war. But in the midst of the chaos, in the midst of the hurt, in the midst of the suffering, God can and still does work. And we can see that through Slumdog Millionaire, this rags to riches story. And we can see it in the story of Joseph. Joseph is a rags to riches story. And his story is found in the first book in the Bible, Genesis chapter 37 through 50. And the story of Joseph takes up more space in the book of Genesis than any other character. More than Adam and Eve, more than Noah and his ark, more than Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it's because it's such a long narrative, I'm going to summarize parts of the story and other parts read from Scripture directly. And I want to encourage you to read this story in its entirety this week at home. Joseph is the 11th son out of 12, okay? So he's got 10 older brothers. Joseph is the favorite. Look at Genesis 37. Then his brothers went to pasture their father's flocks near Shechem. Israel, Jacob, said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them." And he said, "Here I am, ready to obey you." Then Jacob said to him, "Please go and see whether everything is all right with your brothers and all right with the flock. Then bring word back to me." Okay, so what are his brothers doing? Well, they're taking care of the family estate. And what is Joseph doing? Nothing. He's just hanging out with his dad. And then, if it's not already obvious that Joseph's the favorite, look at the way that dad asks him to check up on his brothers. He says, "Please go and see." Please. Now, I grew up in a loving home, but when my parents asked me to do chores, I don't ever really remember them saying please. "Oh, John, will you please go out and clean up the dog poop from the backyard?" "Well, since you asked so nicely." Joseph is so spoiled that his dad says, "Please." Now, I am guilty of this kind of parenting as well. When Ivy was 2, sometimes she didn't eat her dinner. And we would say, "Ivy, you eat your bites or you don't get any chocolate after dinner." And she comes up to me asking for candy after not even touching her dinner. And I say, "Did you eat your bites?" And she says, "No, Dad." And I say, "Okay, but you only get 2 pieces of chocolate tonight." Okay, we run a tight ship at our house. With Dex, it's often worse. And so as Joseph is approaching his brothers, they devise a scheme to get rid of him. They don't like him. They throw him in a well. And the plan is to take his coat of many colors that their dad gave to him, covered in goat's blood, bring it back to their dad, saying that a wild animal devoured Joseph, his favorite son. While Joseph is in the well, some Midianites come by. The brothers decide to sell Joseph to the Midianites. So in one afternoon, Joseph went from being the spoiled favorite in his father's household to a slave to a people he had never known. So Joseph's all alone, sold as a slave by his own family. What's the purpose in this? What can God do here? In the 19th century, there was only one way to ship fresh North Atlantic cod from Boston to San Francisco, and you had to sail all the way around the South American continent. Okay, the trip took months. So you can imagine the first attempts to dress the cod in Boston and pack it in ice failed miserably, right? The fish, you couldn't even eat it by the time it got to California. In the next attempt, the cod were placed in holding tanks of water, shipped to California alive and dressed there. The results were also less than satisfactory. The fish didn't get much exercise on the trip, so they were pasty and relatively tasteless. Finally, someone suggested, why don't we put some catfish in with the cod? And that was a wild idea, since catfish are an enemy to cod. But sure enough, when a few catfish were placed in the tanks with them, the cod kept swimming to stay out of eating range. And when they reached San Francisco, they were in perfect shape. Sometimes it is in the midst of hostile surroundings that we preserve what's good inside of us. It doesn't mean God's doing it, but it still remains true. In the midst of hostile surroundings, we learn some things. This is true with Joseph. Joseph sold to Midian merchants, who then take him to Egypt, who eventually sell him to a powerful Egyptian named Potiphar. And Joseph thrives with Potiphar. Better put, Potiphar thrives with Joseph. God gave Joseph success at everything he did, so Potiphar put him in charge of everything. And he's prospering from Joseph. But Potiphar's wife, she was the real desperate housewife of Egypt. And she saw Joseph as the new pool boy. And so she makes a move on Joe, and he resists. Joseph is tempted by a beautiful woman, and he resists the temptation. Now, in Slumdog Millionaire, Jamal didn't know the second to last answer either. Okay, the second to last, he didn't know it. So he uses a lifeline, and it gets down to 50-50. And Jamal goes to the bathroom during a commercial break, and the host writes on the mirror the correct answer. But is he telling the truth or not? Okay, watch the movie and find out. But Jamal here is tempted. So Potiphar's wife throws herself at Joseph. Joseph runs away. But she keeps his cloak as he ran away. And then she lies and accuses him of rape. And then he's thrown into a dungeon. God, where are you now? This wasn't part of the deal. I'm in a dungeon. I did what was right. Many of us have been there before. I did it right. I kept my integrity. If I would have cheated on this project at work, I would have been promoted. Why me, God? Why does it seem like the bad guys win and the good guys lose? How many times in this dungeon did he say, God, I thought you had a plan for me? Joseph had so many opportunities to throw in the towel on life and on God. But pain and suffering don't have to define us. We don't have to be defeated by our bad circumstances. You don't have to be defeated by bad circumstances. Joseph here, instead of hardening his heart, he kept it wide open. Because one night in the dungeon, he hears this guy in bunk B wake up saying that he had a dream. And Joseph, he knew dreams. Joseph could have closed himself off and said, I'm done with dreams. They never come true. But instead, he interprets the dream for the prisoner. And guess what? The dream comes true. And then his former bunkmate in the dungeon becomes cupbearer to Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the world. And in the story of Joseph, that's not the last dream that comes true. But again, you're going to have to read it for yourself. But within 2 years of being unjustly thrown into a dungeon, Joseph is eventually elevated to second in command of all of Egypt, and God uses him to save thousands of lives. So Joseph was a son in the house of Jacob, and God was with him. Then he was a slave in the house of Potiphar, and God was with him. Then he was a prisoner in the dungeon of Egypt, and God was with him. And when he became one of the most powerful and influential men on earth, guess who was with him? Of course, God was with him the whole time. And he is with you as well. In your hurt, in your suffering, God is not distant. He draws near. He was with Joseph in his father's house, and he was with him in the bottom of the well. He was with him in success at Potiphar's house, and he was with him in a dungeon. And at the end of the story, there's this drought in all the land. And because of a dream, Joseph knew that in the season of abundance, he was having to save up grain. And so when the famine came, all of the people came to Joseph in Egypt for food, including his brothers. Let's read this in Genesis 50. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. "We are your slaves," they said. The ultimate reversal, right? He was a slave, and now the people who made him a slave are proclaiming, "We're your slaves." But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. "You intended to harm me, but God brought about good." It wasn't God that sold Joseph into slavery. It was his brothers. But even so, God brought about the saving of many lives. God is at work even in the midst of suffering. He didn't cause it, but he can work in it. The pain that you endured, God didn't cause it, but he can still bring about good. The hurt you're going through right now, the suffering you're dealing with, the illness, the relationship, the breakup, the financial strain, the problems at work, the problems in your head, the problems in your body. It's not God causing these things so that you'll do something he wants you to do. But God is with you in the midst of it, crying with you, holding you, carrying you, trying to work about good. Can you become better, or will you become bitter in the midst of hurt and suffering? I once read that crisis is like a knife. You either grab it by the blade and it cuts you, or you grab it by the handle and you can use it. God, I pray that for those specifically who are going through some real tough stuff now, I pray, God, that you would work in the midst of it. We may not know the answer why. That answer may never be known. And that's okay. But help us to find a who in the midst of a why. Help us to cling to you in a greater way. Help us to find purpose and to do good in the midst of heartache and suffering and troubles and trials. We need you for this, God. I pray this sincerely. Everybody watching and listening, be with them in the midst of their hurt and suffering. Speak to them. Be close to them. Be near them. Comfort them. In Jesus' name. Amen. I want to thank you so much for joining us online at Prodigal Church Thursday. Next week we continue our series, and then in 2 weeks, Prodigal's 8th birthday. We invite you to come and celebrate with us in person or online. It's going to be great. Grace and peace and love.